Yossi ben Yochanan, Ishu Shalaim Omer. Yossi ben Yochanan, the man of Yerushalayim, said, your home should be open in an expansive way. Meaning, your house should be easily accessible. The Midrash tells us that Avram Avinu, who is the epitome and the role model for what hospitality was, whatever direction you would come to his home, there was an entrance to enter into his home. It was open on all four sides. Your home should be easily accessible, wide open. So people should not have any difficulty considering entering your home. Very often you leave a sign, a welcome sign. Hospitality center. If you build your house in a way where just the structure itself is inviting, people don't have to read between the lines to understand that people are welcome to come there. The setting should be where it's understood that you're welcome. You don't have to be asked to come in. It's understood that you're welcome before you're asked to come in. Unfortunately, we find that in the time of the Gemara, the study halls were out in the country, and it wasn't safe. During the daytime, it was safe. To be there at nighttime was not safe. If a person today would not have a lock on his door, maybe multiple locks, and a security system, and people understand that your home is available to enter, you're putting your life in jeopardy. Or minimally, your house will be vandalized. You'll be victimized. So we're speaking about in an area, a location where it's a safe location. And the people in the location, you want them to understand they are welcome because you want them to be welcomed. So in that setting, your home should be structured in a way where the message is obvious. It's not they have to feel ashamed to ask for entry. Every person is understood, they're welcome. That's the base of Psuch Revocha. I remember the first time I went to Israel in 1970, I was like amazed. In those days, it was unheard of that a Jew should commit a crime in Yerushalayim. You have to be afraid that you'll be attacked, you'll be mugged, you'll be beaten up. It was unheard of. The whole idea of in the large cities where Jews lived, you didn't have to be worried about being victimized. You didn't have to worry. I was amazed people kept their doors open at night. How do you keep your door open at night? Then in New York in 1970, you had to keep your door closed. Remember, my mother, Alea Shalom, used to tell me when she grew up in the 1920s in New York, people used to sleep on fire escapes. In those days, people didn't have air conditioning. People used to sleep outside and weren't worried. When they wake up, their clothing aren't going to be there, or their shoes are going to be stolen, or people are going to climb the fire escapes and enter into the homes. They didn't have to worry about that. There was a certain basic moral, ethical code. People behaved in the most civilized way. They respected one another, as little as they had. They didn't have much. Whatever they had, people valued what other people had, and they valued what they had. So we're speaking about in that kind of environment, based on Psuch L'Revocha. Your home should be open in the most expansive way, most inviting way. Okay? The poor should be members of your household. What does this mean? that poor people come to your house. A poor person understands that he doesn't have much, and unfortunately, he's at the mercy of others. So you want him to feel that he's no less valuable than anyone else. So when he comes to your home, you should make him feel welcome, that he's no different than a member of your household. Meaning he should have access to all the amenities in your home without feeling hesitant because of he's a stranger in your home. Meaning it's bad enough that he feels less inferior because of his financial setting, but in addition, he feels unwelcome because he's not a member of the household. He should be made to feel he's like part of the family. Therefore, he doesn't even have to ask. When he comes to your home, you say, the person's a true host. He says, no, the refrigerator is yours as long as you're in this house. Whatever's here, you have a right to use. You don't even have to ask. To give the person that sense of value, of trust, it's something which is a tremendous gift and accommodation to that person, that he feels that he's valued. We find that Paro, already we're holding before the plague of locust, and he's still intransient, Paro. He's still stubborn. He's not willing to come off his high office. So Moshe Rabbeinu says to him, Ad Mosai me anto leonos lefonai. To what point do you refuse to leonos, to submit? How long does it take to submit? So the word submission is leonos. So Rashi says from the word oni, a poor man is oni. Why is a poor man called an oni in Hebrew? Because of his financial situation and his predicament, he submits to everyone. He has no choice, he submits. He's always in a submissive mindset, an emotional state, because we find the Talmud tells us that oni choshev kemes, that a person who's poor, really impoverished, he's like a dead person. He's like non-existent. Why? Because nobody considers him. Nobody takes him into account. He's like an invisible person. Nobody notices him. So if you take a person and you notice him and you value him, what are you doing for him? You're giving him his whole existence, his whole meaning, his whole purpose. Mr. Glick used to say to me, we're waiting for resurrection. Resurrection is the 13th tenet of Jewish belief. He says he, Baruch Hashem, is able to continuously be involved in the process of resurrection. Why? Because the Talmud tells us, Oni choshev kemes, a poor man's like a dead man. He says he helps people financially, so he gives them that value, that worth. So he's resurrecting the dead. He's taking the poor man and giving him meaning, giving him value, giving him a position, giving him a job, giving him some means that he's able to fend for himself, opportunity. So he's continuously in the resurrection process. That's what Mr. Glick used to say jokingly, but it's true. And therefore, the Gemara tells us that the person goes and undermines another person's livelihood. It's like you're taking his soul. What is a person's essence, his dignity? A person is a self-earner, and he's not a ward of a community. As little as he makes, he has his self-respect. I'm a self-earner. That's his dignity. If you go and undermine his livelihood, and he has no means of support, what are you doing to him? You stripped him of everything. You've taken his soul. Therefore, it says that a person goes and undermines another person's livelihood, it's like you took his soul. So if you take that person, you give him dignity, and you give him value by acknowledging him and making him feel that he's no less than anyone else, what are you doing for him? So firstly, your home is wide open to everyone in terms of the level of chesed you want to do. Secondly, how should the poor who come into you, should they be treated less, or you should go out of your way and make certain that they feel as if they're members of the household. I remember there was a person, he's a doctor, and he lives in Englewood today, came from Paris. Originally he was a urologist, and he became a gynecologist when he came to the United States. Went back to medical school, and he came to Yad Avram, Sephardi, Moroccan Jew. He ended up, when he came, he married into the Shitrit family. The Shitrits live in New York. His wife's a Shitrit, and he came for a while. And we had at Yad Avram, we had a very extensive breakfast, and it was underwritten by Mr. Glick. You could have a full breakfast there. Why? He started it because at one time people would come to say Kaddish or whatever it is, not Yad Avram. This is in Fifth Avenue Synagogue, and where would they go afterwards? They go for the power breakfast in the hotels, and they eat non-kosher. So he provided a full breakfast in the morning, which normally would cost you maybe $10, $15 in the restaurant, because he wanted people to eat kosher. They shouldn't go to hotels and eat non-kosher. So we continued this matter of custom at Yad Avram, even though that wasn't a concern. So every morning after davening, after services, we had a full breakfast, all kinds of bagels and fish and vegetables and cereals, different kinds of combinations. Some people had the chutzpah. They would show up after davening for breakfast, and they would rest a piece of aluminum foil, make a sandwich, take it to work for it. You understand? At least come to davening. You come, make yourself a sandwich and leave. Certain people have no shame, but that's a separate discussion. So this person comes, and you could have your bagel toasted. So a person comes over to him and says, "Would you like to have a toasted bagel?" And we had a woman who took care of it. So he takes his bagel. He says, "Would you like it this, that?" Well toasted, partially toasted, gives it to the woman, brings it back to him. And he figures he's one of the people, one of the caretakers. It turns out this is Louis Glick himself. When he found out that this was Louis Glick serving him, he's like amazed. He's underwriting everything. It's his office. It's this, and he's that, and he's serving me. Till today, if you meet him, we're going back 25 years ago, he can't forget the level of humility Mr. Glick has, that he was able to be nondescript and interact with him and accommodate him. He was amazed. So it's the same context of you, Adiyam Beisfa. You take an ordinary person, a stranger, and you have somebody who's the equivalent of much more than that serving you, and you don't even realize it. And then later you find out, you're amazed. What value does it give that person? It says, this is the place I want to be. Because here we don't evaluate people based on who you are, what you are, who you know, who you don't know. Everybody's treated in that special way. Another interpretation of Yi Aniyim Bnei Beiso, very often people hire employees. It's interesting, many years ago, in the United States, until maybe the early 50s, to be a Shomer Shabbos wasn't simple. If you had to earn a living. Why? Because when you had Sunday was a regular work day, Saturday was a regular work day, was the 5-day work day, people were expected to come in on Saturday to work. So the person was an observant Jew. He would go from job to job, and sometimes for weeks, he wouldn't have a job to support his family. So there were a number of people, religious people, owned companies, manufacturing companies. They manufactured sweaters, clothing, and some of them had employees, 400 employees, which is a big company. And the only people they hired were Shomer Shabbos. They went out of their way to make sure that anybody who was a Sabbath observer, guaranteed he had a position. Because the person understood, and he himself, of course, the one who owned the company was a Shomer Shabbos himself. He went out of his way to make sure these people had a means of support. Otherwise, they were literally financially bereft. I mean, they had nothing. That's also, so if you're hiring a person already and you have a choice, hire a poor man or hire a rich man. You can have a butler. Something? You can have somebody helping you out in the house. Go out of your way, allow the poor people. They should be the ones your employees in the house, rather than call an agency, employment agency. They'll send you who knows who what. So you're doing two things. The Gemara tells us that chesed be done on many levels. Charity is chesed. But if you give a person a job that he's able to retain his dignity rather than giving him charity, you should give him a means of support, meaning self-earner. If you're able to give a person charity, or give him a loan, and he will take a loan, and you give him an open-ended loan, and you could tell him, I'm lending it to you, and you have in mind that if he doesn't pay it, it's fine. But in his mind, he's taking it as a loan. You're giving him that sense of dignity. People borrow money. Rich people also borrow money. Again, it's always when you take the other person into consideration, that's what's special. But you have to think of the other person to be able to make this kind of choice. The Gemara tells us that when you give charity, you should give it, even if the person who receives it knows who's giving it to him, you should do it discreetly. Why? Because if you go and make it public knowledge that the man doesn't have much, you know what's going to be? That person, people knowing that he doesn't have much, they're going to put him in a position, either they're going to say it costs more, and if you want it, you pay the little bit he has, or let's say he has merchandise to sell. They'll chisel him to what? To the bone. Why? Because they know he needs the money. So because you made it public knowledge, you gave him charity, you gave him the merchandise on consignment, but now what is he going to sell for? What's going to be his profit margin? You've minimized his profit margin because people know that he's pressed to the money. They're going to tell him, if you give me 20% off, I'll buy it. If not, you keep it. Knowing the person needs the money, you're putting the person against the wall. So what have you done? By making it known that he's a person who's in need, and you gave him the whatever it is, the merchandise to sell, you've minimized his capacity. He's not able to earn what another person could earn. But what's this all about? When you think about someone else, then you take all this into consideration. If you think about yourself, then you miss the boat. You always have these endless blind spots that you don't see it as you should see it.